When you peak with your very first single, and not just any single, a single that launches missiles from your abode to the other side of the country that would have dire consequences on both ends of the rap music world a few years later, where is there to go? Do you double down on your fiery path, or do you hunker down to be taken more seriously? For Timothy Blair, better known as Tim Dog, the answer wasn't easy. According to him, Compton was in response to record labels wanting him to be the Bronx, New York version of NWA. According to the crew he was down with, Ultramagnetic MCs, or more specifically, Said G, the reasoning behind his infamous single was more sinister. It was strictly economical and opportunistic, trying to get a record deal by satirizing the style of an emerging Los Angeles, California area that, to people like Tim Dog, shamelessly exhibited antisocial behavior. Whatever, it worked. Tim got a deal with Rough House, a joint venture with Columbia Records. Compton went to the top of the Billboard Hot Rap Songs charts. 2 more singles, including a demo Tim did before the NWA and Cali diss, went to the top 20. And his debut album, Penicillin on Wax, found itself as high as number 155 on the Billboard 200. Not bad. But then the problems began to mount. A few artists of the West Coast didn't take kindly to Timmy's anti-Cali fusillade, gimmick or not. Most of the replies went beyond brutalizing Tim Dog to mock a place that, even though credited with being hip-hop's birthplace, was already being a step or two behind the times. In fact, one of the disses almost became a number 1 pop hit. Then there's Ultramagnetic MCs. Although the group had been chiefly responsible for the production of Penicillin on Wax, it was a miracle that they were able to do so at all. They were technically done as a group by 1990, worn down by a prolonged gestation period for their otherwise acclaimed debut album, 1988's Critical Beatdown. Regrouping to hop from Next Plateau to Mercury didn't seem to improve their career trajectory, as the botched launch of their second album, 1992's Funk Your Head Up, has become legendary for snuffing out whatever spark they had left. So one can imagine the group being too demoralized to help out with their quasi-protege the second time out. They had their own industry problems to deal with. Tim would really have to go for Dolo this time. Tim Dog naming his album Do or Die, which came out on April 20th, 1993, would indicate that he had nothing to lose. With the after effects of the Compton dissent gimmick wearing off, Tim had to pivot to vie for respect. And that included ensuring everyone that dissing a few West Coast rap artists does not equate to disliking the entire West Coast. And he demonstrates that in the album's last track by shouting out Tupac, who, though not the star that he would eventually become, was able to mobilize a posse and shepherd him out of a San Francisco club where he was performing. Apparently, some gang members had recognized Tim, and the hostile situation could have turned fatal, undoubtedly fueled by his infamous broadside in '91. But given daps and kissing babies weren't going to enhance the response to his second album, Tim Dog had to show and prove. He sets up the entire affair with the appropriately titled I Don't Give a F, where his first opening bars are,
came out with the jam that had the whole world stomping. Title of the track,
he couldn't resist, could he? But he continues, and if it wasn't clear back in his first album, it's definitely clear now. All that Tim has, beyond the unintended humor, is delivery. You can't help but listen to that gruff voice, which can oscillate within the range of a growl, bark, and roar. It's captivating enough to occasionally ignore his stilted flow, or that most of what he says doesn't connect, even for something as basic as battle bars. The other recurring problem of Do or Die is the production. All but 2 of the beats are self-produced, or as Timmy would have preferred to say in true East Coast style, self-wrecked. Well, good for him, but not for the average listener, who needs to get in the groove before the rapper opens his mouth to spit. Plug him in a bass line and a drum break, and he's good to go. Gone is the fuller, more developed board work of Ultramagnetic MCs in Penicillin on Wax. It's like going to the dying embers of a party. Where's the fire? At least Grab Your Gat is a slight improvement, and that's because of the beat's shuffling feel, thanks to Ike and Tina Turner. But Do or Die really gets started with I Get Wrecked, the only single the album got. Why? Well, for 2 reasons. One, Mo Love and TR Love of Ultramagnetic MCs happened to co-produce the song with Tim Dog. And 2, he got a fellow Bronx native on the track, KRS-One. The difference is clear. The bass and drums of Lou Donaldson's Potbelly is merged with a drum break of Wade Marcus's Spinning Wheel, and the entire thing is looped, deepened, and sped up to create a rumbling soundscape. Perfect for Chris, because if there's anyone who can flow on and off beat effortlessly with a blend of battle bars and social commentary, it's him. And in '93, he was in the middle of what would turn out to be one of the longest primes in rap music history.
My psychopathic, fantastic plastic puts you in a casket. On top of that, you can get your kicked quick. Oh, I'm physically fitting and written, I'm lyric looking, I got more rhymes than Madonna. Get
But when KRS-One kicks off his appearance with this couplet,
what does KRS and Tim Dog have in common? We both hate corny and soft commercial rhyme.
he couldn't have made a more accurate assessment in the song. Well, apart from both of them being from the Bronx. There are 2 verse sections, each one comprising a verse from Chris, then a verse from Tim. It's like experiencing the euphoria of conquering a mountain only for you to come tumbling down. The gap in skill between the person who has mastered all the aspects of being an MC and the person who just sticks to the performance aspect is that wide.
Coming from the butcher shop. What KRS and the dog you get chopped, chopped. Say stop, say stop, stop.
Oh, good God of Sedgwick Avenue. Tim Dog's defense of the East Coast aesthetic, which became hardcore rap in response to the emergent offshoot of gangster rap from the West, is at least commendable. Problem is, he was far from the ideal standard bearer. There were already far more talented acts in New York and New Jersey equal to the task of fortifying the Atlantic seaboard. Gangstar, EPMD, Pete Rock and CL Smooth, Redman, Kool G Rap, Naughty by Nature, and KRS-One himself, to name a few. And the sound, in response to G-Funk, was boom bap, a gloriously minimalist approach to production in a post-Wild Wild West sampling era, and best exemplified by DJ Premier and Pete Rock. Tim Dog was a chihuahua among Rottweilers. To its credit, Do or Die has its good parts. Timberlands is an ode to the durable and waterproof 6-inch boots ideal for blue-collar work, but ultimately became iconic hip-hop footwear in the northeastern United States by the early 90s. For all the songs and music videos that have featured Tims, Timberlands might be the first rap song entirely dedicated to them. Tim praises Tims for their versatility, from stomping on his adversaries and being a fashion statement to knocking boots. And there's a bit more. If I Was a Cop features some live instrumentation, courtesy of bass guitar, sax, and a drum kit to mix things up. Hardcore features one of the better beats, with a catacomb of sound that props up Timmy's threats to sellouts, rival MCs, and opportunistic record execs, as well as his unwavering advocacy. Skip to My Loot, boosted by the amalgamation of the Skull Snaps drum break and broken bits of Funky Worm, is a playful back and forth session with Smooth B of Nice and Smooth that doesn't take itself too seriously. And Mad Dog is Tim Dog's delivery at its finest, complete with a roared hook, a sampling of the same McCoy Tyner bass sample that Black Sheep had used on The Choice Is Yours Revisited less than 2 years earlier, and some bars that amusingly point out how self-aware he can be.
Some people say, dog, you curse too much. Some people say, dog, you yell too much. Some people say, dog, you diss too much. Shut the up, you talk too much.
But Do or Die has none of the drama that surrounded its immediate predecessor. Dr. Dre, with his protege Snoop Doggy Dogg, as well as DJ Quick, may have already sensed their responses, but Tim Dog pulls back here, Quick being the only guy he directly disses in the tracks that bookend the album, and neither of those disses are fleshed out in a verse, let alone an entire song. The absence of that captivating East Coast, West Coast element makes Tim's limitations all the more apparent. If I Was a Cop could have been a decent critique of law enforcement, but Tim Dog has neither the lyrical skill nor the social-political credibility to pull off a convincing first-person role-playing perspective. Maybe he should have been taking notes from homeboy Chris. The gold digger-oriented Get Off the first album was passable, and Silly is worse than an inferior sequel. It's a redundant retread, down to the repeated theme and the guest vocals of Ultramagnetic's Kool Keith and the woman Tim disses. Game is a ribald gathering of Tim and his homeboys, trading and consuming tales of their sexual conquests at the expense of the woman who expected to be at least financially compensated. Just when you thought that no one could deliver worse than Timmy's wooden storytelling and fractured flow, some dude named Chuck shows up in the second verse and outdoes him in both departments.
Ready to flex, thinking of rough but wet sex. I took the have a drink, it's harder than concrete, ready to slam like I'm Dominique.
You've got to be kidding me. Do or Die continues to careen with Make Room, which has the Skull Snaps drum break show up once again and includes just a verse of filler and nonsense, followed by Tim repeating the hook for the latter half of the song. The end finally and thankfully comes with Breakin' North, which in East Coast parlance is basically, I'm out of here. Deuces. I'm ghost like Swayze. Peace out. Audi 5000 G. But not before giving my shoutouts. And here, Tim Dog includes, surprise, surprise, West Coast rap acts. Well, except for one.
I want to thank DJ Quick for playing himself. Yeah, Chad.
Willing to bet that DJ Quick responded to that? Well, first, he would have actually needed to know that the album even existed. Do or Die faded quickly, failing to chart on the Billboard 200, even though it yielded a number 8 Billboard rap hit with I Get Wrecked. And even worse, it turned out that Tim was reportedly stealing blank checks from Rough House. That did it. Columbia cut the dog loose to roam the streets and settle into the next phase of his professional life, which would eventually amount to this.
Tim told her he was planning to ramp up his music career, give the artist known as Tim Dog a kickstart comeback. Over the phone, he offered Esther a business partnership. He told her he'd produced a 5-CD box set collection of his greatest hits. An LA record manufacturer was just waiting for the green light to start duping off thousands of units. Tim told Esther, she says, there was a handsome little profit here for the both of them. But tricky timing. His money was tied up in real estate. So that's why, Esther says, he was offering her the chance to become a limited partner in the Tim Dog brand. If she'd invest $25,000 in 3 installments, she'd get back $100,000.
Who knew Tim Dog had enough material to create a 5-CD box set? Well, what did he do to achieve that? Cobble together his albums and mixtapes? Tim Dog's rapping career, at least as a major label artist, was going to be brief anyway. It's actually a miracle that he had a second shot. For all its remarkability, Penicillin on Wax was not a big seller, and with self-production that wavers from decent to mediocre, the absence of deep involvement from ultramagnetic MCs, the limited skill range of Tim Dog, and the lack of West Coast attention-grabbing stunts, Do or Die was destined to die, critically and commercially, before it was barely born. Tim Dog might have thought that he was primed as a BX warrior in a scene that was being dominated by his peers from the Pacific side of the country, but Do or Die confirmed, once and for all, that he really never had a dog in this fight.
To all the motherfuckers who had my back, peace. But for those who didn't, you.
Thanks for watching. For those new here, welcome to Rapperspective. For the Rappleheads, I greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget to like, comment on, and share this video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. And I encourage everyone to watch, like, comment on, and share other videos on here. See you in the next video.